My name is Evan Parker. I earned the rank of colonel in the United States Army. And today, my own family is suing me for faking it. The courtroom felt colder than the air should have been. Not from the AC, from the way eyes avoided mine. Even on my side of the aisle, like I was a stranger who had wandered in by mistake. In the front row of the plaintiff's side sat my parents, immaculate in posture and wardrobe, as if this was a corporate meeting instead of a lawsuit meant to strip me of everything I'd built. My sister, Laura, leaned back with her arms crossed, smiling faintly, the kind of smile you wear when you've been waiting for someone to fall. The judge cleared his throat. The plaintiff's attorney rose, her voice sharp, practiced. Your Honor, we contend that Mr. Evan Parker never held the rank of colonel, that he has fabricated his military record, deceived both the Department of Defense and the public, and profited from an identity he never earned. I didn't flinch. My lawyer, Daniel Price, glanced at me, his hand hovered close to mine, but I didn't take it. If I had to explain who I was after everything I had done, I had already lost. Then it happened. The heavy courtroom doors swung open with a slow, echoing groan. A tall man stepped in, his uniform pressed to razor edges, sunlight catching the rows of medals on his chest. Murmurs broke out in the gallery. A few people stood without even realizing. He walked to the front, boots steady on the wood floor, stopped in front of me, and locked eyes with a weight that could crush steel. Then, to everyone's shock, he raised his hand and saluted. Colonel Parker, he said, permission to speak on your behalf. I heard my mother's breath hitch. My father's pen slipped from his hand. Laura's smirk collapsed into confusion. For the first time that day, I exhaled. It had begun. I was 19 when I told my parents I wasn't going to Princeton. The acceptance letter sat unopened on the kitchen counter next to my half-eaten breakfast. My father didn't look up from his coffee. My mother froze mid-step. I enlisted, I said quietly, U.S. Army. My father chuckled, not from humor, but disbelief. People like us don't enlist, Evan. We command from the top. We build legacies, not follow orders. I remember that exact sentence because it's lived in my chest for years, heavy and smoky. Laura didn't even glance up from her phone. So you're running away in camouflage now, she said. That was the last time the four of us sat at the same table. They didn't come to my basic training graduation. They didn't send care packages. They didn't write. When my name appeared in a military press release 5 years later for leading a major supply chain recovery in the Pacific, my mother sent a single email. We saw the article. Hope you find clarity in this phase. It wasn't a phase. It was my life. And I had built it alone. What they never knew, what almost no one outside my unit knew, was what happened in Kandahar. It was a covert operation, designed to stabilize a volatile zone ahead of an allied diplomatic visit. Our convoy was ambushed. Communications went dark. One of our highest-ranking generals, a man I deeply respected, was hit and unconscious. We had no orders, no chain of command. I stepped forward. We regrouped, returned fire, improvised an extraction, and got every single one of us out alive. But the entire operation was buried under layers of classification. That day I signed an NDA so airtight it felt sewn into my bones. I didn't care. We survived. That was enough. Or it was enough until the lawsuit arrived. A legal summons from my own family accusing me of falsifying my service record, forging military documents, and fraudulently wearing the rank of colonel. The first time I read the charges, I sat in my apartment for a full hour without moving. Then I took off my uniform jacket, folded it neatly, and just stared at it. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase me. And they knew exactly where to strike. To civilians, the rank of colonel might just sound like a title. To us, it's trust earned over decades, trust to lead when lives hang in the balance. But to someone who's never worn the weight of command, all it takes is one rumor to turn earned honor into maybe he faked it. Daniel, my lawyer, was calm to calm. He suggested we settle, apologize for any misunderstanding, agree to a sealed correction. I stared at him. If I lie to make this easier, I never deserved the rank in the first place. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Then we fight. But without clearance for that mission, your record will look empty. I gave him the faintest smile. Good. Let them underestimate me. They've done it before. That night, I opened a battered box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were notes from Officer Candidate School, a folded flag from a funeral no one in my family had bothered to attend, and a photograph, me at 24, dust-streaked and exhausted, standing next to the general whose life I'd carried on my back through enemy fire. His hand rested on my shoulder. I placed the photo back in the box. This wasn't just about me. This was for every soldier who served quietly, got overlooked, and kept showing up anyway. 3 days before the hearing, Laura appeared on a popular military podcast. "He's always been like this," she said into the mic. "Always had to one-up me. If I won an award, he'd suddenly have a bigger accomplishment. This colonel thing is just another stunt for attention." I listened once. Just once. Then I shut my phone off. They were laying the groundwork, character assassination disguised as family concern. The lawyer my parents hired was a master of public perception. In her first press statement, she said, "We're concerned for Evan's mental well-being. There is no public record of his supposed deployments or commendations, and frankly, at his age, the rank he claims is highly unlikely without manipulation." I was 31, young enough for people to doubt, old enough for them to nod if the right seed of suspicion was planted. Daniel leaned over during trial prep. "We could petition for a redacted statement from the Department of Defense. Just enough to prove your rank." I shook my head. "Even redacted, it risks exposing details that aren't mine to reveal." He frowned. "Evan, they're calling you a fraud." I met his eyes. "Let them. Silence isn't surrender. It's discipline." I wouldn't unseal a classified mission to win a courtroom battle against people who never showed up for me. Instead, I prepared the only way I knew how, by remembering. In the weeks leading up to court, I ran mental drills in my garage. Not physical, mental. Every ambush, every insult, every moment someone doubted me and I didn't flinch. Because the next battle wouldn't be fought on any battlefield I'd trained for. I didn't sleep a second that night. My mind kept replaying every moment with Meadow, every time she'd insisted Elliot was too busy to call me, every awkward silence when I'd asked about his work, every strange, almost panicked look when I'd suggested visiting. Now I knew why. She'd been lying to me for years. By morning, the fog of shock had burned off, replaced by something colder focus. I was done being shut out. I pulled out my phone and found David Chen's number in the local business directory. My hand shook as I dialed. When he answered, his voice was cautious, guarded. "Hello, David. My name's Loretta. I think we need to talk. It's about Tommy." There was a long pause. I heard him exhale sharply, almost like he'd been expecting this call for a long time. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop far from Meadows' neighborhood. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately, same eyes as Tommy. Over coffee, David told me everything. Years ago, he and Meadow had been seeing each other, but she'd ended it abruptly, telling him she was moving on. Months later, he heard she'd married Elliot. She never told him she was pregnant. When Tommy was born, David only found out through mutual friends who noticed the resemblance. But Meadow shut him out before he could get close, told him if he tried to see Tommy, she'd tell everyone he was an unstable liar. I felt sick. Not only had she lied to me, she'd stolen a father from her own child. David's hands trembled as he showed me photos, little mementos he'd kept of Tommy from afar. School pictures he'd gotten through friends. Snapshots from public events. He wasn't some bitter man trying to stir trouble. He was a father who'd been erased. That's when we made a decision. We were going to confront Meadow together. But we couldn't just show up empty-handed. We needed proof so Elliot couldn't dismiss it as gossip. That night, I went digging. Old baby photos, hospital records, timelines. I even remembered a family Christmas where Tommy had drawn a family tree in school, putting David's name at the top of my dad's family without knowing what it meant. Every piece fit together like shards of glass forming a dangerous truth. The more I uncovered, the more I realized Meadow's lies didn't stop with David. She'd built her whole life on manipulation, but I wasn't about to let her win. Not this time, because now I had an ally and a plan. The night after my confrontation with Ethan, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for signs I'd missed. And then it hit me I had missed them. The late-night calls he said were work emergencies. The weekends he claimed he was visiting his brother. Even the perfume on his clothes that wasn't mine. I felt sick, not because I'd been lied to, but because I'd believed him every single time. The next morning, I made a decision. If Ethan thought he could play me for a fool, I'd make sure the game ended on my terms. I called Mia, the only friend I trusted completely. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. I just whispered, "You were right, and I need your help." Mia's voice was steady, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Tell me what you need," she said. I told her everything, the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. And then I told her my plan. The next few days, I became someone Ethan didn't recognize. I smiled more, laughed at his jokes, and even asked if he wanted to go on a weekend getaway. He agreed instantly, thinking I was desperate to fix things. What he didn't know was that the weekend trip was just the stage for the grand finale. The night before we were set to leave, I pretended to be asleep. Ethan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He tried to slip it into his pocket quietly, but I was faster. I snatched it and ran into the bathroom, locking the door before he could stop me. My hands shook as I scrolled, and there it was. Dozens of messages with another woman. Her name was Sienna. They'd been together for over a year. And the worst part? She thought I was the other woman. I could hear Ethan pounding on the door, shouting for me to stop acting crazy. But I didn't feel crazy. I felt awake. That night, I sent Sienna a message. Not to fight her, but to warn her. We agreed to meet in person the next day, just hours before the trip Ethan thought we were taking. When I walked into the cafe and saw her, I almost lost my breath. She looked just as shocked to see me. We talked for an hour. By the end, we were no longer enemies. We were allies. And together, we decided Ethan's little empire of lies was about to burn to the ground. For the rest of that week, I walked around the house like a ghost. The laughter that used to echo in these walls had turned into silence so loud, it was almost painful. And then, on Thursday morning, a plain white envelope slid under my front door. No name, no return address. Just my name, written in a shaky hand I didn't recognize. I opened it, and the words hit me like a freight train. "They've been lying to you for years. Meet me at the cafe on 7th and Maple. Noon. Come alone." My hands trembled. Was this some cruel prank? Or the answer to everything that had been tearing me apart? At 11:59, I pushed open the cafe door. And there she was. A woman in her mid-50s, her eyes sharp but tired, as if she'd been carrying a weight for decades. She motioned for me to sit. "I'm sorry for the secrecy," she said quietly. "My name is Marianne. I used to work for your parents." My chest tightened. What does this have to do with me? Her gaze didn't waver. "It has everything to do with you. I was there the night they changed their will. I heard the conversation, the real reason you were cut out." My pulse roared in my ears. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They were never planning to give you anything. Not because you didn't need it, but because they wanted to punish you. For something you didn't even do." I stared at her, my mouth dry. "What are you talking about?" She slid a folded document across the table. It was a copy of their will, an older version. And in it, my name was listed. The inheritance was supposed to be split equally between me and my siblings. "That was before your brother and sister convinced them you were ungrateful," Marianne continued. "They showed them fake texts, emails you never sent. They made it look like you were planning to cut them off once you got the money. Your parents believed them." I felt my vision blur. My own siblings had stabbed me in the back. "And there's something else," Marianne added. Her hand shook slightly as she pulled a small velvet box from her purse. "This was meant for you. Your mother kept it hidden." I opened it slowly and gasped. Inside was an old gold locket with 2 tiny photographs. One was of me as a baby, the other a man I didn't recognize. "Who is this?" I asked. Marianne's expression turned grave. "That is the man your mother loved before your father. And the truth about him is going to turn your entire world upside down. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping bitter coffee, my mind still spinning from last night's chaos. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, and my mother appeared, eyes red, hair disheveled, her voice trembling. I didn't sleep, she admitted, sliding into the chair opposite me. I thought about what you said, all of it. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but something in her face stopped me. For the first time in years, I saw fear in her eyes, not fear of losing control, but fear of being truly seen. She took a deep breath. I was wrong. I was jealous of you, she whispered. The attention you got from Dad, from friends, even from strangers. I hated it. And I thought if I could control you, I'd stop feeling so small. Her confession hit me harder than any of her past insults ever could. Because this wasn't just about power, it was about her own insecurities, projected onto me since I was a child. Before I could respond, the front door opened. It was Ethan, his face pale, his jaw tight. He didn't say a word to my mother. He came straight to me, took my hand, and pressed a crumpled envelope into my palm. Inside was a single piece of paper, a printed email. It was from my mother. The subject line, "You don't want her." The body of the message was worse than anything I could have imagined, lies about me cheating, stealing, being manipulative. She had sent it to Ethan the week before our engagement party. I looked up at her, my voice breaking. "You tried to destroy the one good thing I had?" She didn't answer. Her silence was her confession. Ethan's voice was steady, but laced with rage. She almost succeeded. But I know the truth now. And I'm done letting her poison us. That was the moment something in me finally snapped. I stood, grabbed my coat, and turned to my mother one last time. "You've taken enough from me. I won't let you take me from myself." And with that, Ethan and I walked out together, no yelling, no more begging for understanding. Just a quiet, solid choice to never go back. It wasn't a movie ending. There was no neat bow, no sudden reconciliation. But as we stepped into the cool morning air, I realized something powerful. Freedom doesn't always come from winning the fight. Sometimes it comes from walking away.